Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88-85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits, and remember when he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with 2 other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him, Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's good? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh edition of Gabriel Talks Football. I am hiding my face because it's so ugly, but this is the start of a long week of Bears programming that is going to be red hot at times because of the caliber of loss that the Chicago Bears had. Mike North will be with us at 3 p.m. Tomorrow it's Buffon 55, our annual Halloween special, and we should all dress as dead people for that show. And then on through the week, a total of 7 shows until kickoff next week. So hopefully you can share what we're doing here on the Ballroom Network. You can hit the like and all that stuff and show your appreciation for our hard work. With me is the star of the show. His name is Greg Gabriel. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I got to ask you, I meant to ask you, when's trick-or-treating in your neighborhood? Right on Halloween?
Yeah, on Halloween, starting at 4 p.m., I believe.
Yeah, ours was yesterday between 2 and 5. You know how many people we had?
1, 2, really?
I spent about $30 on candy.
Oh, no.
What the hell? Yeah.
Hide that candy, Greg. Hide that thing.
Get it the hell out of this house. I'll be, I'll put 10 pounds on.
Taurine says, what a way to lose. Feels like the double doink all over again. What do you say, Greg? How do you rate this defeat?
Well, there's a lot of things to say. Yeah, but I'm some of it is my reaction to posts I saw on X, many of which I don't agree with. Complete negativity. They want to fire everybody. The culture sucks. Well, I can say this. It's the culture that got them back in the game from 12-0 to a 14-12 lead with 20 seconds left in the game. Okay, so it works. The odd part about the Hail Mary play, I mean, they work about 5% of the time, and it's the second time in 2 weeks the Hail Marys worked. Last week at the end of the first half, Aaron Rodgers threw one for the Jets about the same length. I don't remember the exact same length, but they do work. But this one worked because the Bears fucked it up real good. And one player in particular, Tyreek Stevenson, was way out of position. And we don't know for sure where he was supposed to be. But when he's 15 yards, 20 yards off to the side, turning around John with some fans or whatever, I mean, it's, hey, you got a game left, man. The game wasn't over. In his mind, the game was over. No, the game wasn't over.
Isn't that a part of the culture, though? That this guy was not coached.
I don't believe. I don't. People say it's the coaching. I don't agree with that. I don't agree. And I'll tell you why. The onus is on the player. The coach doesn't play the game. The coach teaches you what to do. And Flus said after, we've practiced that 100 times. Okay, so who's it on? They got
my opinion. It's on everybody. It's on the player and the coaching staff.
The players in a play like that, when it goes wrong, it's on. In my opinion, it's on the players. For number one, it wasn't lining up. You're supposed to have a guy behind that tip guy, or right in front of that, and they didn't. There was a good 3-yard gap between the tip and where the guy who caught. I don't even know who the hell caught the ball. It was like, what the fuck? And I turned off the TV. So, but if you watch, and I've watched it a bunch of times from that one angle where Tyreek didn't even get to the thing until he jumped. So, yeah, so a lot of that's on him because he was out of position. And I'm sure having Brisker not there didn't help. But, what's going to happen to him? People say he should get cut. He isn't getting cut. Okay, so forget about that. He's a good football player. He made a mistake. And part it's up here. Does he get fined? Probably. Does he get benched? I don't know. You're not gonna bench him to hurt the team. You're gonna bench him if you got another guy to step up and play, and that would be Terrell Smith, who had been out. It's the first week back with a hip injury. So if he could play, maybe you sit him for a week. And say, get your act together because he did not have a good game. Number one, and number two, the way he did that was just ludicrous. Now, some other people complain, well, why they shouldn't have given up 12 yards on the play before. I'm not agreeing with that either. The whole purpose is to use up time, burn the clock, which they did. And so they end up having a 50-yard play. It got tipped, except that, whoever did the tipping got about this much of his hand on it and went backwards instead of forward. Could have timed his, that play was literally an inch away from being a Bears victory versus a Bears defeat. And it's a bitch of a defeat, but it's not the end of the world. You got the play there?
I got the play here, and this is the play before the Hail Mary. And so now, before I do that, let me show you the play before this. Let me show you. This is the play before the 10, 12-yard gain.
Right.
This is the Bears guarding the sideline, and then on the next play, they decide not to guard the sideline. And as Rex Ryan, the former head coach of the New York Jets, said, now you're giving them the opportunity to throw a Hail Mary from 50 yards out as opposed to 70 yards out. Makes it much easier for him to launch the ball into the end zone. And so that's my problem. This is a coaching error. Whether you like it or not, it really is a coaching error to allow him to get just close to the 50-yard line so he can launch. Then, of course, the next play, and you will see Tyreek Stevenson.
Yeah, he's off the screen. You see him over there drawing.
Exactly. And so do you have 4 men and you have a spy as one of the fourth guys? A spy on the quarterback, 53, TJ Edwards, is spying him. That's, to me, ridiculous. And then, of course, you got Tyreek.
Although that's the way you play the play. And you rush 2, sometimes you rush 3. The play, the problem was right there. They didn't have a guy in front of this guy. And no, that guy was probably Stevenson. Flus will explain that today because you'll get a chance to look at it. There was drastic holding right there. There was holding on that play.
They're never going to call it.
They're never going to call it. Right. They're not going to call that, and they're not going to call you like who was it? Jalen Johnson said said after the game, he says, you can mug the guy down there and they're not going to call interference.
Right.
So it was a lucky play. It sucks. And now, somebody said, well, what do they do from here? I said, they go to bed, they get up, they go to work, they look at the tape, they correct the mistakes. The ones that are played poorly have to be held accountable. I saw one thing. DJ was on Mullion Hall this morning, and he said, and he's part of that leadership council. And he said the leadership council is going to have some things to say with Tyreek Stevenson, because that was not being a pro.
So what do you think is the appropriate disciplinary measure that the Chicago Bears should take with their starting cornerback?
Well, I think a fine's a lock, my opinion. If that's now, in saying that, I don't know if it's a finable offense. Should be, but I think mental mistakes should be finable offenses. But there's different things you can and can't do within the structure of the CBA. So I don't know if it's a finable offense. Would I think about sitting them a little bit? Yep. But I'm not going to sit him unless I know I got somebody who can take his place, which could be Justin Jones or Jalen Jones, or it could be Terrell Smith. Terrell Smith is the guy who's supposed to be in that position, but he's been hurt until last week. The biggest problem, that's a mistake at the end of the game that maybe cost the game. The biggest problem is might have been 3 offensive linemen lost in that game. And we'll know later today. And I'm thinking like 3 for the season. And I may be only because, Braxton hurt a knee and he comes out, doesn't come back. Well, how bad's that knee? Has he just got an MCL sprain? He's going to miss 3 or 4 weeks, or has he got an ACL or something? Okay. Amagaji showed what we have been talking about. He missed all of training camp. And the way the rules are set up within the league right now, you miss training camp, you miss all your chances of learning how to play, because you only get 12 or 13 padded practices during the course of a season. So all that daily work on technique and the pass protection, they do one-on-ones every single freaking day in camp, he didn't have those, and it showed. Yep. So
he did some good things out there, but he made some blunders.
Our guest last week, Jerry Azuma, said, "Well, he got his payback on that, and that was on Sweat's touchdown." Yeah. So, will he be better going forward if he's got to play? We hope so, but it's still lack of experience. So if he had a camp, it'd be an entirely different story, but he didn't. So it's like he right now as a player is almost like, being in the first week of camp. Talent has nothing to do with it. It's getting the reps against NFL people. Now, Tevin said a knee. He got hurt and then he comes back in because Murray goes in, and then Murray has a pec. As soon as Flus says in the press conference a pec, I thought, oh, fuck, he's got a torn pec. And if he's got a torn pec, he's done. He's done for the year. I mean, that's like a 4-month injury. So you might have, the entire left side of the line might have been wiped out. And I'm thinking, I tweeted this out last night. I'm thinking, well, they're not going to make any moves, maybe a minor move at the trade deadline. And it's like, no, you might have to get an offensive lineman. But who is there out there? There's never offensive lineman available to trade deadline. Okay. And it's usually a guy that's coming out of contract. But now, what do you got on the practice squad? You got Borum, who's ready to come back. Bates should be ready to come back next week. And then you've got, who's the other guy here? Tell you in a second. Jake Curran, who played in Seattle, started like 6 or 7 games in Seattle. That's it. In all fairness, those guys might be better than, well, I know Bates is, but the other two might be better than what you can get from another team. Who the hell knows? But it's now it's a problem. If it was just Tevin, Murray steps in. I don't think you miss a beat. But you lose all 3 guys, and I'm not trying to overreact because I don't know how severe the injury is. Braxton's the one I'm more concerned about, but you still got to find somebody to play at that left guard position too.
The offensive line, they did not have a great day yesterday, but I thought they played well enough for the Bears to win, and clearly they did because we had the game. We were leading with 2 seconds left on the clock.
They had 2 really good drives in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. When they had to here's the important part. They did it when they had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only complaint I had with coaching all day was giving the ball to the guard on the 1 yard line. Mm-hmm. To me, that was ludicrous.
Yeah.
And when you do that play when you're up by 17 points
and at home,
if it works. Yeah. To see if it works. Not when you're down and you need a touchdown. And now, granted, he said, well, we've practiced it. Practicing ain't live. What?
I'm saying I don't care that you practice it. You don't call that play there. That's
I agree. I just think it's it's a guy who's probably never carried the ball before in his freaking life, who's been a lineman, and he looked like a lineman. Now, it wasn't the greatest handoff from Caleb, but part of that may have been the angle that the lineman took to get the thing. It was a clusterfuck. And so I do not call, or I don't like that call. Now, if you notice, right after they put the camera on Flus, and he kind of got in Waldron's face about that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that?
I missed that.
Yeah. So, he turned and the concern was, what the fuck?
He could have vetoed it. I mean, they've told us that's the process, that the play, they discuss some of these plays before they're called. And so he could have vetoed it. And they went into the game with that on their play sheet. That should have never been there. Not a road game, not a game of this magnitude. Like you said, this should be at home with a lead.
I'll disagree on one thing. When you say game of this magnitude, hey, the Bears are up 17 points. I'll do it. When Fridge got the ball the first time, they were already winning the game. So now the pressure's off. This was a pressure-packed play. And so now the added pressure to the lineman to have a good operation as far as grabbing the ball. His hands were like this. Your hands should be like this. I was a running back. I think I know a little about that.
I bet you do.
So, and you got to have your hands right. If you're running to the left of the quarterback, you got to have your right arm up because if you have it this way, then your arm's in the way. Right. And I'd have to relook at it and see if you have the right hand up. But I didn't like the play call at all.
I do want to have a discussion regarding the coaching staff because I think you're being too lenient with Matt Eberflus. The fact of the matter, and I know you were throwing out the first season, but the fact of the matter is that he's 14-27, as McFact says. And as PZ says, this isn't the first time we're questioning Flus's end of the game management. Washington, Detroit, Denver, most recently, to name just a few, PZ says, and he's absolutely right. Now, McCaskey said when Matt Nagy was fired, he said one of the reasons is I saw us making the same mistakes in the last game of the season that we did in the first game of the season. He was referring specifically to Jalen Johnson not not making sure the guy was down and putting hands on him to secure the tackle. Instead, the guy got up and got a touchdown. And so what we're seeing now with Matt Eberflus, Greg, are the same mistakes over and over and over again. He's a great defensive coordinator. He's a great tactician of, how to put your hip here and all that. He's great at all that stuff. But game management, he sucks. And these first quarter problems have to do more with coaching than anything else. That team comes out of the tunnel and they're not ready to play at a high level offensively. I'm not saying fire Matt Eberflus tomorrow or even this season, but I'm saying you have to start collecting names for job interviews because it doesn't look good.
Number one, that's a given. You always got a short list. You got a short list the day you made the hire. Okay, so that's an ongoing job of the general manager. Okay, but this is the same coach that they won 3 in a row, and I don't give a fuck who they played. They won 3 in a row, and they scored 10 offensive touchdowns in the last 2 games. They were flat. Part of it, we discussed this last week. How are they going to come back from the bye? Okay, not the way I would have liked it. It just, was it play calling? It just didn't seem like they were ready. They were flat. I think Caleb put too much pressure on himself, and he was tight, stiff, whatever. I mean, you can say he was as stiff as a wet night dick. I mean,
which is why they should have run the ball 90% of the time and let him get acclimated to the big time environment. And here's another complaint I have about Caleb. He's calling all these plays at the lines, making all these adjustments. I think that is hurting the rhythm of the team. Matt Eberflus said at halftime, we got to find our rhythm in offense. It could be because Caleb is calling all of these adjustments and plays at the line of scrimmage. And maybe it works sometimes, but on the road against a hostile crowd, you got to lay off that and just go with the play that's called most of the time. Now, I could be totally wrong.
I don't agree with that either, because the quarterback's job is to come up and he is a pre-snap read, and he's looking at his defense, and he knows the call that was made, and then he's looking at how the defense is lined up, and he's going, that isn't going to work. So it's on him to make the change. So Bennett, lay down. So I think that's trying to look at it objectively, it's an advancement. Let me let him out of the room here.
Sure, of course. I'll put up some comments here that people have. Doreen said it was the double doink. We put that on already. Berlissimo says Waldron giving the ball to Kramer when we needed 6 instead of giving it to Roshan was a huge mistake. Real dog, if someone can tell me why the F Travis Homer is getting snaps in the 4th quarter. And that's what I've got from comments that I've starred. So keep them coming. We'll address your questions as the show goes on. Greg,
one thing I would be all pissed off and spew negativism, because that's not me. I've had to go into the building, and when I was a player, go to practice the next day after you've had a tough loss. It ain't easy. Let me tell you, there's nobody who fans are pissed off. There's nobody more pissed off than the players and the coaches.
Well, I got to tell you, Greg. Tyreek Stevenson posted this to Chicago and teammates. My apologies for lack of awareness and focus. The game ain't over until zeros hit the clock. Can't take anything for granted. Notes taken. Improvement will happen. Hashtag bear down. So CHGO posts that, and they post.
I thought that was a horrendous.
Hold on, I'm getting there. How do we feel about this, Bears fans? How do we feel about this? And you wrote back, I've seen a lot of dumb and despicable posts since the end of yesterday's game. This one is the worst. Why don't you get out of your way to preach? Why do you go out of your way to preach hate? Assholes. Greg, I think you overreacted there. I mean,
No,
why are you're
that
calling them
thing,
assholes and they're asking a question, Greg?
No, they're not. They were doing what the media does here, and that was begging for negativism. That's what they do.
If you scroll and see the comments, 90% of them were in support of Tyreek Stevenson. They're asking a question. You're the one interpreting it as a negative comment. I think that you were the one that was being negative, not CHGO.
Well,
and I hate to defend
what?
those guys because
I got a bunch of comments that say different, and I'm not going to sit here and go through them all because that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but I did not like the comment. I thought it was despicable.
It's not a comment. It's a question.
It was a comment.
No, it's not. It's a question. You got to take it literally.
A comment put as a question to bring about negative responses.
Okay.
Because there was, caught up. There was one guy said, retire, quit.
That's not CHGO's fault. They're asking the question. How do you
for asking the question?
I'm asking you questions right now. Are people going to fault me?
I'm talking about that one. I did not like the question. That's my prerogative. I didn't.
That's your prerogative. But I'm saying that I think you're wrong to call them assholes and to tell them that they're preaching negativity. I think it's way off. I have to bring that up because when I saw it, I was like, "What the hell? A reporter can't ask a question now without you putting your narrative. You're interrupting me. You're interrupting me. You're interrupting me. You are putting your narrative into the questions that people are asking. You shouldn't do that, in my opinion.
They got one reporter in that whole group, Adam Hogue. That's it.
Maybe he wrote the question. I don't know.
One reporter. Don't say they're reporters. There's one reporter.
I didn't say they're reporters. I didn't say they're reporters.
There a minute, a second ago.
But my point is, I've made my point. Let's move on. Okay. So we talked about the offensive line. Caleb's play, I mean, it was embarrassing, the miscues. And so what do we do about that to help him get more comfortable, to help him be more relaxed so that he can play the way we know he can play?
Although it's real simple, it's experience. It's being in games like that. And, he goes in that game, he flunked the test. Let's be honest. He flunked the test. Mm-hmm. Okay? He got too hyped up. He was going home. Like I said, he was tight. You could see it right in the first play of the game. He was tight. Mm-hmm. His throws were off. His whole rhythm was off. And, he says, nothing bothers me. Bullshit. That whole situation bothered you. He's 22 years old, and he's got to, you know how you get better? You go through it, and you learn from it. And that's the only thing. And maybe it's because I worked in this league as long as I did that I look at it differently than fans. I am not going to overreact with negativity because you can't. You've got your team. You're not going to all of a sudden go out and change 30 guys on the team because you didn't like the loss. Yeah. You got to work with them.
But, better. For a lot of us fans, I think, some people don't understand that are always defending the franchise. And I'm not saying that you're always defending the franchise because you've been very critical of them at times. They need to realize, though, that some of us fans have been following this team for decades, and the frustration mounts and it collects. And we have to exercise our frustration with this team. And now the place to do that is the social media town hall, Twitter and X and Facebook and all that stuff.
Okay, this is where I disagree because this group wasn't there when I was there. Or, they're not responsible for what happened before. Yeah. They're responsible for today.
Yeah, McCaskey's been there, though.
Oh, he owns the freaking team. I mean, but that's, you like what he does one day and you hate what he does the other day. That's what I hate about the Chicago fan. And if they want to get all over me for that, go right ahead. But that's what they do. They're like a freaking roller coaster. They're up and down and up and down. And as soon as something goes wrong, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon on Friday. And then they lose on the last play of the game and fire everybody. That's not the way it works.
Well, let me throw this at you so you can shoot it down and disagree with it. Maybe part of the problem is the way the George McCaskey and the Bears organization has done business. The fact that they've never fired a coach in season for clearly malpractice, because yesterday's game was malpractice. You're in a small minority defending the coaching staff for what happened.
Wasn't Trestman fired in season?
No, he finished both seasons. Yeah, this team it needs to be shaken up. And the fans will appreciate George McCaskey coming in and saying, I'm not satisfied. You know, almost pull an Ambassador Johnson and the Jets. And that was a bad decision in New York. But I don't know if it would be a bad decision in Chicago, particularly because we're allowing malpractice to continue. And we still have a chance to salvage this season, but we need different leadership.
So what are you going to fire everybody?
No, you fire Eberflus and you put Eric Washington as the interim coach.
You're going to lose 3/4 of the games.
Why?
Because it just doesn't work that way. You're not going to do it. First of all, do they play hard for that man?
They do, except Tyreek Stevenson.
That's the most important thing. That's the most important thing. Eric Washington doesn't even call the plays as a defensive coordinator. He'll put together the game plan, and you're going to make him a head coach?
Make somebody else the head coach.
He's not.
So again, we get into another season where we don't have an adequate replacement on staff to be the interim coach.
Record? The record's 4-3. They're not even a losing record.
I mean, you got to account for quality of opponents. I know they're on the schedule. They won the way they're supposed to win by 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. That's plain. But the fact is that they don't have a winning record against winning teams. They're winless on the road. Fair. They have a building pile of shit in terms of losses that has to be addressed. And for the McCaskey family to deny that the problem is there is what really infuriates us fans.
Although you're sounding like a fan instead of trying to sound, and which you are, and I appreciate that, but that's just not reality. And that's not the smart thing to do. It's, and any football person will tell you the same thing. It's the absolute dumbest thing to do. It's, and I'm not calling you dumb. It's, you just don't do it. You make that. This team is still very much in the race. You look at the record of everybody else. Okay, you got 2 games coming up. You should win. And that means you start going into the division. Assume they do win. They'll be 6-3. And they start 6-3 halfway through the season going into the division. That's when the season starts.
I agree.
Okay, so I'm not, I what I don't like, and I knew this was going to happen, the overreaction. It's overreaction. It's emotion taking part. It's everybody is talking, writing, whatever, strictly on emotion. Yes. Sit back, have a fucking beer, get laid, do something.
I'll take that part. Sign me up for getting laid.
No, it's like I said a couple of minutes ago. Nobody feels worse than the guys in the building. That's their freaking job. Yeah. That's their career. And they, but I put it this way, that's going to be tough for those players to go in there today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And as it should be.
Absolutely.
As it should be. And then you're going to find out, and as soon as Flus comes on, whether it's, in the next 15, 20 minutes or not till 2:00 this afternoon, we're going to find out how bad some of these injuries are. And I have a feeling a couple of them are pretty bad. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I hope so too. I just want to let everybody know that we do have an eye on the Chicago Bears YouTube channel. If Matt Eberflus begins his press conference during the time that we're live. We'll switch to it to hear what he's got to say about the injuries and, of course, the big play at the end of the game. He's probably studying that over and over again and might be even rehearsing what he's got to say. Greg, what do you think? And let me ask you this question. How far should a head coach, in your opinion, should a head coach go in attributing accountability, responsibility to a particular player or players who have made a mistake as big as the one we saw yesterday? It's an opinion question.
Great question, and I'm not sure I got the right answer or an answer. And I'll go back to last week when New England's coach Mayo called out his players, and the former head coach was like, "Fuck you, I won with those guys." And I know what kind of, and you don't do that publicly. So right away it caused controversy. Now, is Belichick trying to position himself for a job? I'll tell you what, I'm one who believes that, I worked with Bill for 7 to 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he was a lot younger. It was 84 to 91. And since he got out of college, guy's never had a break. He's been coaching football every single year. And football, it's a time consuming. You got to be driven. You're not successful working in the NFL unless you are a grinder. And it's long days every day, and you feel like you're cheating people if you're not doing it. I mean, my wife never saw me when I was working. I'd leave at 6:30 or 7. I come home 8:30 at night. And the coaches are there a lot later than me. But Belichick has had his first time off. He's 11 months younger than me. So he'll be 73 in April. I'll be 74 in May. And when he having that year, and hear me out on this, just tell me if you would agree or disagree.
You bet.
He got that year off. He's doing some media, but he's traveling around. He's going to see his son coach out at Washington and doing whatever he wants to do. And all of a sudden, do you think at that age, because he will be 73 when he tries to do it, he's going to want to do it again? He's already worth like well over $100 million. Yeah. It's not like he's broke. And would you?
Not me.
I don't know. I know where he was. He was like pissed when that relationship broke up last year, and he wanted to do something about it. But now you get that year off. This ain't too bad.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. He should not, and I don't think he will go back. And the fact of the matter is that he's pretty good at what he's doing. I watched the show that's on here locally on the CW, and he's breaking down plays and so forth. And I think also that his competitive spirit is saying, you know what, I'm going to be better than Brady at this. I'm going to be better than anybody at this. He does a great job as a broadcaster, much better.
Ultra competitive, and he, having worked with him, I know how hard he works. So he's not going to. You might not agree what he says, but he's putting in a lot of work to come out with what he says, and that's going to be his. So I don't think it's a sure shot that he comes back and coaches. He thought he was getting the Atlanta job, and Atlanta backed out. And then there was stuff about, well, he'll be the Jets coach. The chances of him being the Jets coach are about 40 million to 1. Because number one, he hates the Jets. Number two,
I said that too.
Okay. Number two, the guy he burned 20-something years ago still owns the frickin' team. Now, at that time, Woody was just in the process of buying it. So he didn't officially own the team. The estate of Hess owned the team. But Woody was involved in the discussions.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's in going to the Jets. And I know John Mayer said the other day, I'm not firing anybody after this year. You can't just keep firing people every 2 and 3 years. That's how you end up. And here's the thing, too, because it gets me to the Bears. So right now we got a pretty good defense, correct?
Very good, yeah.
Okay, you bring in another coach.
Mm-hmm.
You can take that defense and you can throw it out the window because he's going to have his own philosophy. He's going to want his own scheme. And some of the players on this or playing here currently aren't going to be able to play in that scheme. And it's the same thing like when we brought in Levy. We had a good defense with Dick Duran and Greg Blatch doing it, but we got rid of all the players. And so you're tearing it down. And if you want to keep tearing it down, then you're going to keep losing. That's my opinion for what it's worth.
Well, it's worth a lot, but you're going to get comments like this. Zach says you can't stop hiring the wrong guy, Greg. They hired the wrong guy.
I don't believe he's the wrong guy. Does he make mistakes? Yes. Everybody, there's not a coach in the league that doesn't make mistakes. And there's not this doesn't go on just in Chicago. You know, a couple of weeks ago, but being that I follow Buffalo a lot, you know, the fan base and the media wanted to get rid of Sean McDermott. You know, they only got a 3-game lead in the AFC East. And they've been to the playoffs like 6 games in a row. I just said to one guy, go, be careful what you wish for. What was this team like before?
Absolutely. I used to say the same thing when my brother says, fire Lovie Smith. And I go, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you might get into. And I like to bring that up to him from time to time. Here's Berlissimo says, but Greg, at what point do you put it on coaching? Allowing your offensive coordinator to hand it to Kramer, not defending the sideline from their 40-yard line, not calling timeout when your DB is taunting fans pre-snap. You know, at a certain point, you got to point at the coach and says, you don't have full control of this team.
Okay, now I'm going to say this about that. I did not know that about Stevenson until after the freaking game.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, and I guarantee you the people on the field didn't know either. So that one, it's not like, you know, it's real easy to say, oh, should have called the timeout. You're not in the heat of the battle. And that changes. And I don't disagree with the way that they did the defense. Could have, if they guarded the sideline, that might have ended the game. Yeah, but the important, and Flu said it right, it was getting down to one play. Okay, they should have defended the frickin' play. It was 50 yards long. They didn't. And if they did, we'd be having an entirely different conversation. We'd be pushing we'd be pissing and moaning about the one call, but we'd be pushing, oh yeah, their culture and everything else. So everything is going backwards because of one frickin' play.
Well, but it's not one freaking play.
Well, I know it's not one, but when you win the game, it changes the narrative.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people are pissed. Tooch says, how long do we need to wait for Flus to become a top coach in the league? Maybe he never becomes better than middle of the pack. That's my concern. When you look at the Super Bowl winners over the last couple of decades, more or even more, really to the end, most of the teams had Hall of Fame quality coaches, beginning with Vince Lombardi, Super Bowl 1 and 2, going to the Bill Belichick era and the recent era with Andy Reid. These are Hall of Fame coaches. Do you look at Matt Eberflus and say he could potentially be a Hall of Fame coach?
No, I mean, and that's a very valid point. But you're not going to do it. What's today? October 28th? You're not doing it on October 28th. Right. You're doing it the second week of January or first week of January, depending on how the season goes.
Right. And
we still got the records 4-3. We played 7 games. There's 10 games left to play.
I agree with you. And I went on my rant. I'm not advocating that the Bears fire Eberflus mid-season. I think it would be dumb with a 4-3 record. You got to see how the team bounces back. The press conference today, I think, is important because he needs to go out there and demonstrate something with his words and with his actions regarding this particular player and any other players that were responsible.
He's not going to say anything publicly about the player. Not too many coaches would.
Would you?
No. You're gonna if you're gonna fine them, you're gonna fine them. It's gonna be kept quiet. The kid's gonna know about it, obviously. The players know about it, but we're not gonna know about it.
Do you think it would be a bad question for somebody from the media to talk about Tyreek and bring up Tyreek?
And they can ask him, and he's going to probably say, I'm not going to answer that. We keep that inside. And no, could he bench the guy? He could, but we're not going to know the answer to that either.
Yeah.
Okay. And number one, know why? They don't want to tell Arizona.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like, he should come out and say, we've addressed this with that player and we are handling that internally. But trust me, we're handling this in the most forceful manner that we can under the CBA, and that's it. I'm not asking any more questions, because something that he tends to do is he allows the media. You were the one that brought this to my attention. That one of the Bill Parcells said, I'll handle all these repeated questions. I say I'm not answering any more of these questions, and Eberflus needs to do that. He needs to tell the media this is how we handle it.
He's got to control the room.
Yeah, he's got to control the room.
You don't let your adversaries control the room. You control the room.
Yeah.
Next question.
Exactly.
Okay. So, or you can be like you and me and piss and moan at each other, but we still love each other at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, this is the way I think we should handle this as Bears fans. I posted something yesterday. Jalen Johnson said, frankly, I don't know who is supposed to be where on that play. Now, when he signed that big contract, he said, I'm going to take a more leadership and vocal role. To me, if you're going to be a real leader, you should know where Tyreek is supposed to be on that play, where your other cornerback should be, the safety. You should know where all of the 7 guys that are back there, you should know where they are. And you should be looking around to make sure everybody is in their place. That is what a leader should be. And so I posted that, and people were attacking me. Oh, you're saying throw a guy under the bus? No, I'm just saying, if you're a leader, you need to know.
It's a valid question, but I go back, and I believe he's being totally honest. It's a play we've practiced, he said hundreds of times since he's been there. I guarantee you they practice at least a couple times a week. And so, and it's not just Flus, it's Flus, Washington, Hoke, because Hoke's got the DBs. It's everybody getting back there to do it. But when somebody thinks the game's over and is off on his own, John with the fans, that to me, that needs to be addressed. And reality is, it's still this far away from the play going, the Bears got half their hand on it and the ball went back instead of forward, goes forward, The game's over.
Exactly.
So, we're talking half an inch to 3/4 of an inch away from winning the game, and it would have been a hell of a win. But sometimes you might not agree with me. Sometimes a loss like that can be a good thing. It can be the impetus for the season 4. Okay, because this team can do 2 things. They can say, "Oh fuck," and go in the tank, and it's all over, or they can come out steamed for next week. And really pissed because they know it's on them that they lost.
Yeah. Well put. Very well put. Boy, this play is it's going to be talked about for weeks. Hopefully the Bears come out with a decisive win over Arizona next week, because we need to forget about this, and like the players.
Arizona's I mean, they just beat Miami in Miami.
I know.
Right, Miami. Let's be fair. Miami stinks, but
Really
Tua played. He came back. He hasn't played in a month, but he came back.
Mm-hmm.
But they're a up and down football team. I don't think they've won 2 in a row in God knows how long.
Yeah. Yeah, since last season or the beginning of the season. Yeah.
So
it's bad.
It's did I like what happened yesterday? No. Is it the end of the world? No. Is it the end of the season? No. Is there a lot of overreaction? Yes. My way of thinking is, and it's been this way for years and years and years, it's how do we put it behind us and move on to next week?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Today you make the corrections. And if I'm, tomorrow's a day off, but if I really want to win, I mean, they don't practice or anything, but players should be coming in my opinion, and doing work on their own.
Yeah. Greg, you brought the name John Hoke, and yesterday I was going to post something regarding Hoke, and I decided, you know what, I'm not going to go there. But I will ask you the question. How much responsibility should John Hoke take, and the defensive back position coach, whose name escapes me right now? How much responsibility should they take? Because on a play like that, shouldn't their eyes be on the defensive backs totally? Because Stevenson started to jaw with the fans before the Hail Mary. He actually started in the middle of that 12-yard gain. He started then, and with 3 timeouts in your pocket, he should have. I'm thinking, if I'm a coach, and of course I'm not a coach, but timeout. And then get your teams together.
Would it have been a good time? Probably. I mean, we're talking hindsight here, but could have been. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, make sure we got everybody on the same page. This is how we're doing it. Yeah, it probably would have been a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say, "Hey, we practiced this. They know what they got to do, and now they got to go out and do it." It gets down to I'm not one who was always ready to shoot down the coach, because yes, the coach designs the things, but the players got to play the game. They're the one executing. They're the one getting paid a shitload of money to perform. And when you got a guy who goes off topic and goes rogue, so to speak, and gets his ass, or has his head up his ass and out of the play, that's wrong. I mean, and so is that a blame on the coach, or is that a blame on the player? To me, it's a blame on the player. Now, I mean, somebody might disagree with me, and that's fine. But those guys, if you make a mistake doing something, whose fault? It's not like North's fault. It's your fault. If I make a mistake, something, it's my fault.
Absolutely.
So
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question. You've worked with NFL organizations. How many different head coaches have you been exposed to? You were exposed to Parcells with the Giants. I think another couple of coaches, maybe, or another coach or two.
Well, I'll start off Chuck Knox.
Chuck Knox, excellent coach. And then was it Parcells? No, there was somebody. Oh, okay. Parcells, and then
Knox, Parcells, Ray Handley for 2 years, because Parcells quit after the draft.
Right.
So where are you going to get a coach in May? And so they elevated Ray Handley, who was the running back coach, and for 2 years. And George's big mistake in that was he should have fired him after the first year. And I can't do that, because George was, what's the word I want? just wasn't. You're not giving him a chance, type of thing. You got, and he should have.
Yeah.
And we knew it. But then we had Dan Reeves for 4 years. Jim Fossil. And
that's a lot of great coaches.
Okay, then Fossil, and then Dick Duran here, and then Lovey here.
And then Lovey. A lot of great coaches. So would you say that those great coaches, with the exception of one or two who are not great coaches, would you say they did a really good job of getting the most out of a player, maybe so than some other coach like Matt Eberflus?
Everybody had their own personality and how they did and how they did things.
Sure thing.
Dick, very low key. I don't think you ever heard him raise his voice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to, Parcells was on top of everything, and he controlled everything. I'm best coach ever with. Dan Reeves was an egomaniac in that, like, give you for instance, in practice during the week, they'd script the offense and the defense, and he'd have the defense script their defense so that the offense would have success. In the meantime, you're killing your freaking defense.
Yeah.
It was stupid.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. A lot of people would maybe disagree with you on that, but I'm totally in your camp.
No, you gotta. Okay, well, I'm going to run this play in practice, so I want you to run this defense so I can have a successful play in practice. Well, that's not how it works in a game.
Exactly. Oh, goodness. All right. Let's
that
see
was the worst 4 years of my life in working in the league was the 4 years with Dan Reeves.
Yeah. And Dan had a lot of success with the Cowboys, but it just didn't transfer over.
Denver.
Or, excuse me, Denver, yes. He played with the Cowboys, that's right. MC Fact says, please ask Greg about the Bears not having 3 or 4 defenders in the end zone that last play of the game. Do you know the technicalities of that? Because I've heard that each guy should be on a guy. So Stevenson has a guy, Johnson has a guy, and then the free safety is in the end zone in case it's tapped back to a receiver there.
Right. There's supposed to be a guy, but there was no guy behind. There's supposed to be a guy behind. Mm-hmm. They're all bunched together. Once the ball gets launched,
right?
They may be back, but the ball gets launched and they're playing the ball.
Right.
Okay. See how they're all going to the ball there?
Yep. Sure. They forget the receiver
when the ball was thrown versus where they are at the end is two different things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Now see, look at that. Who's that who gets his hand on? Oh, that text. Stevenson coming in out of freaking nowhere.
You can't write.
Yeah, look, that's right.
This is a horror movie. That's what it is. You gotta laugh at it. If not, I'll cut my wrists. And then I gotta tell you one other thing. I think I got this loaded up. Oh, maybe I didn't. Darn it, I forgot. But yesterday, about 3 hours after the game, somebody tweets out that video of a fan that clearly shows Tyreek hamming it up with the Washington fans, and Bears fans who had end zone seats are telling him the play has started. The play has started. And he turns around and runs into the players.
Yeah, I know. There's an angle I saw. I must have seen it 10 times. It's coming from the end zone's right here. It's coming from that corner. I see that angle, and it's like,
oh Lord.
I mean, and there might be some coaches that would cut a guy over that.
Yeah.
I look at that like that's almost spiteful because the team comes first.
Yeah,
And
I agree with that.
okay, so you got to correct that, and you got to correct it in a way that you know it's never going to happen again. Is that sitting him, fining him, or both?
Mhm.
I don't, they're going to figure, and I guarantee you that Ryan's going to have something to say about it too.
Yeah, absolutely. He better. He better. Yeah, I'm of the opinion, and I think, Greg, you and I are similar, is, when a player makes a mistake, and he's made some mistakes, Tyree, you coach him up, you teach him. You don't get rid of the guy. You want to see how he handles that adversity and how he becomes better as a result of it. Because if you cut him and then he goes on to be a Pro Bowl player elsewhere, that's on you. That's on you, the coaching staff and the GM who released the player. Coach him up.
Absolutely.
You invested in this player. Coach him up, and hopefully he will respond like a true champion. God, I was going to say something else regarding about players who need coaching up, but I've forgotten. Man, the brain just starts to whittle away. Let's see what we got in terms of questions here. Let's see, Greg. How does the baptism of the rookie right tackle sit with you? I think he means the left tackle, Karan Amagaji.
I already mentioned it. He played like he didn't have a training camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You almost had to expect it. That's why I kept pushing. If you go back, if I got to play him, I want to play him a guard, because a guard, you got help.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And you have no help at tackle. And you got help to the inside, but you got no help to the outside. He got beat a couple times at the outside. And granted, he did have some decent plays.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But when you have a bad play at that, it's like a corner. When a corner has a bad play, the whole world knows about it. And when a tackle has a bad play, the whole world knows about it.
Yep.
And so you might be stuck with them, or you could do. I'm sure they're going to be talking about this today, depending on what the injury is with Braxton.
Mm-hmm.
You could really shuffle the line, and you could put the guard there, and put Matt there, Pryor, and because Pryor started games at left tackle in the league. You could keep Amagaji there. Bates let's say you took Pryor, so you have experience. Put Pryor at left tackle, then you have Bates at right guard, but you still got an inexperienced left guard. So who are you going to put there? Right. Or you put Bates at left guard, and you about to bring Nate Davis back at right guard.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things you got to do, or you can go out and try to find somebody. But I think if you went through trade deadline transactions, and really trade deadline transactions until about the last 3 years have been nil.
Yeah.
3, 4, there weren't any. So it's very, very difficult. I saw a couple things where there's two players on the Jaguars that they might want to move. One was Cam Robinson, who's their starting left tackle, did not play yesterday, so he might be hurt. Mm-hmm. And then Shrouth, I think, is the left guard, who also I don't think played yesterday in their game.
I think
so when I saw that, and like the Irish Bears guys had a thing up, with the eyeball, thinking, oh, that'd be interesting. And I'm looking at the contracts, and Strauss got another year on his contract. Robinson's, I think, got 2 more years. Robinson shoots up to over $20 million next year. He's not that good.
Yeah.
So
Greg,
why are you going to make that deal?
Greg, we got breaking news courtesy of Jim Bob. He says that Rappaport is reporting Braxton will miss 1 to 2 weeks.
Well, that's
Ian
a good
Rappaport. Yeah, that's not terrible. But I want to get back to Karan Amagaji, because I thought Tony Romo was completely unfair to the kid. on the one play that Romo continued to harp on throughout the rest of the game.
I vaguely listened to the commentary. I'm just.
I don't blame you. Jeez, it
no,
was.
I tune it out. It's on, but I don't listen to it.
I need to do that too. But Romo, on one play, there is an offensive. The right end comes out to the right, and so he follows him and does a very effective job of blocking him, but there was a slightly delayed blitz to Amagaji's right, and Amagaji probably should have picked up that guy because there was no help from a running back or a tight end to come in.
I can't answer it.
Yeah,
because number one, I have to see the play, and you got to see it from the end zone to see it right. Yep. And do you have a back in there to pick it, because it's a blitzer or somebody, and so you got an overload. There's somebody coming in over the guard. There's somebody coming in over the tackle. You're bringing a guy in to work in between. He's coming free, and can you expect Amagaji to pick him up? Well, yeah, maybe if he's been in the league 4 or 5 years. What Tony probably doesn't know, and I'll give him a little bit of a pass here, is this kid had no training camp.
Yeah, nothing.
No training camp.
Right.
So, and I'm sure that they were hoping they didn't have to play him except in like blowout situations one way or the other.
Yeah.
But they got stuck, and he doesn't get that many reps during the week. Now this week he's going to get reps, but it's still, and I don't think we're going to know. I think you're going to find out Sunday what that line's going to be.
Yeah. They'll definitely keep it a secret. I am not down on Karan Amagaji. I think
I'm not either. Because I know what it was. It's strictly inexperience. That's not absolutely that he can't do it.
Absolutely. And if he's out there at left tackle next week, I'm not going to worry about it until he proves that he's not ready yet because of the lack of practice and maybe conditioning and so forth. So we'll see about that. But let's get to some other questions.
Then I want to see here. Just
you bet.
Patriots are trading Josh Uche to the Chiefs. Where's Justin Fields will test his hamstring. I just want to. Braxton Jones, who was knocked out yesterday because of knee injury, got good news. Sources said he may miss a week or two, but it's not considered a major injury, which means he's probably got a little MCL sprain. But little MCL strains can be 4 weeks too. So depending on the severity of the strain, sometimes they'll mobilize the leg a little bit for a week maybe. Other times you're going to be icing it and having them doing stuff with it, right away. Really, it's going to be how quick a healer is he.
Right.
But I have a feeling Murray and Tevin might be worse. That's good news to me. I thought he might have an ACL.
Gosh, I'd hate to see serious injuries to any one of those two guys, but we'll see. Eberflus should be talking to the media, and hopefully as soon as we're done with this show, and Mike North and I will cover it at 3 Central. All right, Velus Jones was released. Your thoughts on the release of him? And the Bears, Brian Post kind of hinted that maybe we'll bring him back for the practice squad. We'll see if he's not picked up on waivers, so we'll see.
Well, being that he was waived Saturday, it doesn't go through on waivers till today. They'll know it at 3:00 today if he got picked up.
Okay.
If he didn't get picked up, they can sign him with the practice squad. Same thing with Blasingame he's a vested vet.
Right.
You can bring him back to the practice squad if you want. That one kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
But at the same time, it didn't because Waldron's never used a fullback in Seattle. Didn't even have one. You use tight ends, which a lot of people do now. There's very few fullbacks in the league. But the people the point I wanted to make was the guy who was inactive was Khalil Herbert.
Yeah, because they might be dangling him.
See, I've been saying that for 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And why would you trade him? Because he can't block and he can't catch. And so in this offense, that don't work.
And just about any offense.
Right. But it wouldn't shock me if they try to move him. It surprised me that Travis Homer was active right away, but then right away when I saw it, I said, he gone.
Yeah. Jeez. So with Velus, was that a mistake by Poles, or was that perhaps a mistake by the coaching staff for repeatedly throwing him out on special teams when it was pretty obvious that he did not have the mental makeup to avoid making mistakes?
Well, you go on your scouting report from college.
Mm-hmm.
You know how many muffed kicks he had in college?
0.
There you go.
Yep.
0.
That's the frustrating thing. What happened to you? The death of that ferret really?
In my opinion, it's confidence. Once you lose confidence, then you get tight and bad things happen. Somebody had to go. The guy I thought that was going to go, he's still there, was Dominique Robinson, because they played they're real heavy on the defensive line now.
Yeah, I think he's being dangled too, and I'd hate to see him go because he looked so impressive in preseason.
Guy you want to, and he can't. He can play the run.
Yeah, which he didn't do his first 2 seasons with the Bears. That was his Achilles heel, was setting that edge. And then he adds all this muscle on, and now he's able to set the edge, but he can't pass rush. So.
But reality is, he said he had 1.5 sacks his very first game.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since that, he's had 1.5.
Yeah. Tooch is writing comedy as we go along. He said the Bears got so they could sign his ferret much better. His ferret is dead, Tooch. Go stop that.
It's history now. So whether he goes to the practice, we'll find out really tomorrow. If he clears waivers today, they might say they're signing into the practice squad, but who knows?
Jim Richels is a fan of the Detroit Lions, but he joins us from time to time, and he asked this question: how is Ryan Poles avoiding criticism? Well, he's avoiding criticism on this show, but I'm not sure he's avoiding criticism throughout the Bears fandom and in the media. What do you say to that, Greg?
Ryan's had some bad moves, and the first guy to say that he's had some bad moves is him.
Mm-hmm.
He took accountability on the Chase Claypool trade. He hasn't taken accountability on Nate Davis, but if they got rid of, I don't think they can afford to get rid of him right now because of the injuries.
Right.
But who knows? It's going to be what happened to Tevin and what happened to Murray.
Yeah. And, I can understand a Detroit Lion fan asking this question because truly Brad Holmes has done a super job of building that roster up in Detroit. A lot of people laughed at the Jahmyr Gibbs pick. They criticized the acquisition of Jared Goff, but all of that stuff has paid huge dividends. I laughed at the Dan Campbell hiring, and I'm wrong. The guy can coach, although sometimes he coaches too aggressively.
He coaches the way his personality is.
Mm-hmm.
Dan is, he's a Parcells protege.
Yeah.
We drafted him. Parcells was the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Worked for Parcells in Dallas when he started coaching. When I was around him, when he was a young player, he was as quiet as a church mouse.
Mm-hmm.
But, the real personalities come out, and he's a tough guy. he's polar opposite from Flus.
Yeah.
Flus is kind of nerdy. You know, he's old school. He talks in basically in coach speak. You know, as far as, you know, we do this, but he's not lying. He's telling you the truth. This equals this, and so. Right. You know, but he's not going to be the guy that's going to say, well, if you play us, we're going to break your fucking leg, you know, because that's what Campbell says.
Yeah, exactly. Let me ask you this. Of the qualities, all these coaches, you named them a few minutes ago, that you have had the good fortune of working with, was there a consistent quality among those head coaches that you said, that's what made these guys great coaches? The reason I ask that is because it appears like McCaskey, since the Mike Ditka thing, the McCaskey family doesn't want that big personality like a Ditka anymore. They want these nerdy coaches like Dick Duran.
I can't answer that. I don't even know. It's because the McCaskies. Okay, I've been here for one coaching hire, and that was Lovey. Yeah. And Michael didn't get involved in that.
Right.
That was Jerry's decision. Jerry hired Lovey.
Right.
Okay. And if you go back, the media all thought we were going to hire Russ Grimm.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Absolutely. The former Washington Hog.
Right. And he, you know, they let Grimm, Lovey, and one of the other guys talk to the media after one of their interviews. And you know, the media favorite was Russ Grimm. Now, I mean, the guy we wanted was Saban.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was, you know, actually from the money standpoint, it was a done deal. It was really over control of the roster. And Jerry wasn't about to give up control of the 53, and he shouldn't have. That's the general manager's job. So that's why Nick, you know, when Nick went down to Miami, he had control of the 53. And how long did he last? 2 years? You know why? Because he knew he still couldn't control everything, even though he had control of the 53. He said, between the salary cap and everything else, he goes, I don't need this shit. I can control everything in college.
Yeah. That's excellent. All right, let's see what other questions we have. We've got AW says, do you think that the Bears may be thinking about bulking Robinson up, Dominique Robinson, and moving him inside next year? I mean, he's close to being at defensive tackle size.
He's only 270.
Well, you know, he had 20 pounds, right, of muscle. You can do that.
Well,
steroids and stuff.
I don't know. I mean, he needs to be 290 or better, you know, and to play within this scheme. Could it? Yes. Will it? I don't see him having the frame to carry that kind of weight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's reality. You've had him. This is now the third season.
Right.
And he hasn't gotten any better. Now, yeah, he's playing the run a little better, but his job is to really rush the passer first. And if you look, like the one guy comes in yesterday, he had missed all but the first week of preseason, and he gets like 2 pressures right off the bat.
Yeah. Darrell Taylor.
No, not Taylor. I will break that.
Are you talking about Booker?
No, the guy brought off injured reserve on Saturday.
Oh, Cowart.
No, that was
Jacob,
2 weeks ago.
Jacob, help me out, chat room. Help us all, guys.
I'll tell you in a minute. I got the roster right here.
It's Cowart. It's CJ Williams.
It's Jacob Martin.
Jacob Martin. That's what I meant.
Yeah. So Jacob hasn't practiced since the first week. I mean, it's practiced the last couple of weeks, but he like the first week and a half of training camp, he's going, never even gets into a preseason game. and then they got to put him on IR. He had a thing. So he's in his first game. He got 2 pressures. 2 by my count, maybe more than that.
He was a presence, no doubt about it. All right, more questions. Let us see what we got here. Sports Chicago Style says, was it a mistake to not challenge that pass? That looked like it wasn't caught, and you still had 3 timeouts. I'm not quite sure which play.
I know what pass he's talking about, and I'll tell you why. There was no frickin' replay.
Yeah, right. Well,
you gotta. They hurried up. They knew. I agree. It was an incomplete pass. Okay, the ball, and they said on TV, it's pretty close. They didn't show the replay until after the next play, and you got to have a replay. Okay, here's the way it works: is that there's a screen in the coach's booth. So if there's a replay,
right,
that's coming over on the air, they can see that. And they can, hey, coach, you got to challenge this, and then Flus will throw the red flag. Same with every other team in the league. Well, if you noticed, Washington did a hurry up on that. They got up to, because I think they knew the guy didn't catch it.
Yeah.
And they got the ball off before you could even attempt to challenge it. So that one, you can't put anybody on that, but there's no replay to look at it until after the fact.
Yeah, and talking from a TV perspective, having worked in the industry for a while, I thought CBS did a terrible job with the broadcast. Forget the annoying Tony Romo for a second, but just their coverage of plays. For instance, that one, not showing a replay. And yeah, things were going fast, but you could still immediately go and show a 5-second clip of when the ball is hitting the turf or whatever the situation was. And
it looked like he trapped the ball. He had it, and then – let me get my ball here.
There you go. CBS is awful, Plank. I hate to say that because they employed me for about 8 years, but they are awful. At least that
my XFL game ball here.
I love it.
So he comes down, and the ball's underneath him, and the ball's like this.
Yeah.
So to me, it was an incomplete pass.
Yeah. And just one other thing regarding the Tyreek situation is I picked up on Tyreek having these verbal fights with Terry McLaurin and maybe another member of the Washington Commanders wide receiver. There was Terry McLaurin visibly saying F you to Tyreek, and you're full of S. And that, to me, should have been a storyline because it ended up being a storyline. On the very next possession, they challenged Tyreek deep as if to say, let's go deep on him and shut him up. And then, of course, Tyreek's actions at the end of the game. That should have been a storyline that the producers who were in charge of that broadcast should have brought to the attention of Romo, and it should have been discussed on air. But
there was a lot of jawing going on throughout the game.
There was.
In fact, I posted third or fourth quarter. I go, these teams clearly don't like each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's a lot of jawing going on. And somebody put out and said, how could they lose this team when they did, last year Justin threw for a gazillion yards and they scored all these points. It's a different team with a different coaching staff.
Absolutely.
Everything's different. It's a different year.
Absolutely. And I do think that, the Commanders looked at that tape from last year and they worked at trying to get DJ Moore out of the game. Now, I can't say that definitively. I'd have to look at the all-22 and have somebody.
Their defensive game plan was very, very good. You can't take that away from them.
Yeah. It was. It really was. Let's see. I think we covered all the questions. If you got any more questions, fire away because we got about 5 minutes left. Greg, so what about next week? We travel to Arizona. It's a good team. They fight hard. If we've got troubles in our defensive backfield, which has gone from one of the best to now being, making dumb mistakes, they got to face Marvin Harrison. They got to face a quarterback who is similar to Jaden Daniels in terms of the way
he's not similar. He's 5 foot. Well, he's probably 5'10".
Yeah, but he moves around, so that's not an issue.
He can move around, but he's not Jaden Daniels as a rookie is better than Kyler Murray as a 6-year pro. Kyler Murray does absolutely now. He'll tear us apart now because I'm saying this, but he does nothing for me. Not that he's just not a good person.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've heard some rumors to that effect that he's kind of a dick. So
he's a pure I, me, my guy. That team's hot and cold. You know, people want to criticize the Jets as being a bad franchise. The worst franchise in the National Football League, without question, is the Arizona Cardinals.
Interesting.
Starting with the ownership. And if you've been following a lot of stuff that goes on, you know, all the stuff that Terry McDonough had to go through, and he got awarded a few $1 million for that. You know, as a director of player personnel, they tried to like blackball him and stuff, and he did nothing wrong. They were cheating when the general manager got suspended for his DUI. The head coach got screwed over in that whole thing. The whole situation sucked.
Really ugly. CJ Williams is saying that Chris Emma from 670 The Score is reporting that Matt Eberflus said Tyreek Stevenson was the player who was supposed to defend Noah Brown on the Hail Mary. And, you know, I can't imagine. I've done a lot of dumb stuff on the playing field, off the playing field, and so forth. I can't imagine how he felt when he saw the fans telling him they've snapped the ball and the players are already 30 yards downfield and he runs over. His mind is probably
still wasn't running fast. He could have.
Yeah.
He had plenty of time to get over there.
Yes.
You know,
and
then it was just, I'm going to make a play on the ball. Oddly enough, he's the guy who made the play on the ball.
Exactly. But I also think that might have been an element of panic because he should have been gone to his position as opposed to making the play on the ball.
Right.
His position was in the end zone.
Question.
So, golly, I hope the kid turns it around. I'm praying and hoping for Tyreek Stevenson to pray it around, and I'm hoping and praying for Matt Eberflus.
If Emma wrote that, is Eberflus doing his presser and it's not on Twitter or not on X, and he's just doing it?
I did check that as I saw that coming from CJ. It's not on YouTube. It's not on, so it could have been in a broadcast that he said that, or it could have been before he's hit the podium and he's talked to maybe a couple of reporters.
Well, it'll be on their YouTube channel. It'll be on the website.
Yeah,
right after.
Absolutely, it will. 13 minutes ago, Matt Eberflus on why the Bears believed handing off to Doug Kramer was their best option. Yeah, it sounds to me like the press conference might be on. Let's see if other reporters are reporting from the press conference. Let's see who usually texts this thing out. Brad. I think Brad has been missing some of the press conferences. I'm just guessing, especially the Monday ones.
Well, he might have. Because he writes that long column, he might stay overnight and then come back. Let me try Fishbane.
1 minute ago, Courtney. Yeah, it does appear because Courtney tweeted that out too. Eberflus saying Stevenson addressed the team in a team meeting this morning. And Courtney is also saying a couple of notes on assignments. Matt Eberflus on the helmet. This is what Matt Eberflus said, that TJ Edwards was responsible for Austin Eckler, who did not run but stayed in pass protection. Tyreek Stevenson was responsible for boxing out Noah Brown on the Hail Mary. Kevin Byard was going to be the one to knock the ball down. Montez Sweat, who was deemed questionable to return with a shin injury, had already been ruled out by the Bears at that point, because he's probably asked why Montez wasn't in the game for that last play.
He also said that, according to Kevin Fishbane, that Tyreek Stevenson addressed the team this morning.
Yeah. So, I feel for the guy. I'm angry, but I feel for the guy.
I don't feel for the guy.
Really? You don't at all?
No. I appreciate the fact that he had the wherewithal to tweet out, "I fucked up."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do I feel bad for him? No. He's getting paid a shitload of money to do his job, not to mouth with fans.
All right,
And he worded it right. Game ain't over until it's over, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with Kay here. The culture among the Bears defense that was on display in preseason was them doing a lot of trash talking. And maybe, there's a fine line. You want your guys to be badass MOFs, and talk trash and so forth. But you don't want that, what we saw from Tyreek. He's trash talking the fans.
Hey, you got to play to go.
Exactly.
You gotta do your job, man.
Oh my God.
Like I say, I don't know if it's a finable offense because that's a CBA thing. But if it's a finable offense, I fine them.
I agree with that. Something has to happen. Fine them or have them, do the laundry or something. Have them come over to my house and do my laundry. that would be fun. Oh my gosh. My wife says, "Am I going to have to do it?" And I was like, "Please."
I do all the laundry here.
Oh, you're an all man, man.
It's just, I work here. She works.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't leave the house.
Yeah, I have responsibilities too. I don't do them. I have responsibilities in the house too. All right, Greg, you are the absolute best. Thank you for a great show. We will continue our Bears coverage this afternoon. And of course, all of these shows are available on demand. You get them on your audio podcast and so forth. But the best way to stay on top of what we're doing, especially our live YouTube programs, is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get a notification on your device. Greg Gabriel.
Let's hope we got a back to winning ways next week.
I think we got a 2 or 3 game winning streak coming.
Well, New England's after that, and then and New England. I thought New England was going to be fighting Carolina for number 1, but they beat the Jets. I'll tell you how bad the Jets are.
Oh, that's pathetic.
I tweeted out last week when they made the trade, or it was a week and a half ago, really, that that Adams wasn't going to do as much for the Jets as the guy from Cleveland was going to do for the Bills, because Aaron Rodgers can't play anymore. He can have a play here and he can have a play there. He can't get out of his own way. He's got no movement skills.
Mm-hmm. Sam Darnold is a much better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers today. And all season.
Sam Darnold's really playing good. You can't take that away from him.
Outstanding. And didn't he play for? No, he played for the Giants. Was it the Giants that Darnold?
He was a Jets. He was the first quarterback taken in that draft.
Oh my gosh. And we think we have it bad. We got a 4-3 record, and we don't have Aaron Rodgers on that team, so we're doing pretty good.
No, I go back to when I've said this before, when I was with the Giants. We said, yeah, the Giants always win the media. They win the offseason. They make the big moves, and they always suck.
Yeah, exactly. That is so true.
Every year they win the offseason, and every year they suck.
And every year they suck. For Greg Gabriel, I'm Aldo Gandia. We'll see you back here next week celebrating a Bears victory. Goodbye, everybody.
See you later.
Press the right button.